a little countdown. Hello and welcome to Parenting Stuff I Wish I Knew Sooner and Want You to Know Now. I'm your host, Erica Desper, founder of the Center for Confident Parenting and a mom who has seemed to learn everything I need to know about parenting the hard way. I'm joined today by Melissa Yelito, the founder of My Advocacy LLC. Melissa, welcome. Tell us a bit about yourself and how you came to do the work you do with families.
Hi, Erica. Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful to see all of the great things that you're doing for the community. So I'm really excited to be here today to share a little bit about what I do. So my name is Melissa Yelito. I am a special education advocate and owner of My Advocacy LLC. I am a former teacher. I started my career in the Baltimore City public school system where I taught special education and regular education. And then when I moved to Pennsylvania, I was in the Downingtown area school district, again, regular education and special education. So I kind of got to see both sides of things and definitely had a lot of experience sitting on the school side of the IEP table. In addition to being a former teacher, I am a mom to two little girls. They're 2 and 4, so I am very much in the thick of it. But when I had my oldest daughter, I took a step away from the classroom and really found myself just kind of missing being involved in education. And one of the biggest frustrations for me as a teacher, and I taught in two very different school districts.
Sure.
But a common theme was there just was not enough support for my students. I, with my special education background, tried everything under the sun to support these kids. I collected the data, I collaborated with related service professionals, outside providers, parents, and just found myself sitting at the table asking for more help. I was one person. I was charged with educating all of the students in my classroom. And to be able to adequately support some of the students in my room, I needed a one-to-one aide, or I needed the emotional support teacher to push in. And I just felt that, the powers that be, the administrators that maybe hadn't even met the student came to the meetings, and they were making those big decisions, not, me, the elementary school teacher with the child all day, noticing the need. And so it just became incredibly frustrating. So when I had my oldest daughter, I got into advocacy. I started at the ARC of Chester County, where I supported families residing in Chester County, kindergarten to 12th grade plus transition. And then in March of this year, I opened my own business with the hope of expanding. And so now I support families in Chester County, Delaware County, Montgomery County, and Philadelphia. I also work with families in early intervention, so starting at 3 years old when they qualify, or helping them to qualify for that IEP all the way through 12th grade and transition years. So that's just a little bit about me.
Well, congratulations on launching your own business.
Thank you.
Most of the people that I, plan to have on here, we all have a similar start. We went through our own challenges and experiences and are kind of directing that into something that can help others. So I totally align with that. I love that. Well, thanks for filling us in. So let's get to the questions that I had for you today. For anyone who is listening and not familiar with what an educational advocate does, how would you define it?
So an educational advocate is somebody that has a deep knowledge of the special education system, special education law, procedures, and processes, and then really supports the family in understanding all things special education. So it can be very overwhelming when your child just qualifies for services to understand all of the acronyms, all of the options that are out there for your child. You don't know what you don't know, and oftentimes no one is going to tell you. So that's really, a big part of my job is educating the families that I work with on what's available, on what options they have, connecting them to resources in the community, and then, of course, supporting them at the IEP table. And
Mhm.
having sat on the other side of the table, I have, you know, had that experience, which I feel, helps me to be the best advocate I can be, because I can kind of anticipate what the school district is thinking or what their
Mm.
procedures are for things, and then really helping the parent to effectively share their concerns and collaborate with the team to ensure that their child is making progress.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, and I feel like a large part of my job as an advocate is really listening
Mm.
and hearing the story of the family that comes to me with their concerns, because
Mhm.
I hear a lot, they don't feel heard. There's no one that's stopping and taking the time to understand what the family is going through, what the child's going through. And so I find that, hearing them, listening, giving that empathy is huge and much appreciated, and helping them explain their situation to the school team in a way that is, effective and helps the team to understand their child and their needs.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I won't get on my soapbox, but I definitely can relate to not feeling not feeling heard or validated. So my next question is, what type, like, a parent may have heard that and gone like, okay, this does not apply to us. I don't have a kid in special education. Um, skip. However, I would argue that many of us may end up there. We just don't realize it yet. That was the case with our family. So I want to ask, what type of scenarios, like, what are the scenarios you're most commonly seeing that would warrant a parent to reach out to an advocate? And either with that or separate, I also want to know, like, how soon in the process, I of course have my own unprofessional opinions about this. How soon would someone want to reach out, and what types of scenarios are they reaching out for?
Sure. I would say the most common scenario, I get phone calls from people and it is their worst day. They are
Mm.
having, things came to a head and they are so frustrated they don't know what else to do to help their child, and they're calling me in a crisis.
Hmm.
Um, and so that could be their child hasn't made progress on their IEP goals, and the district has not been responsive to that with adding additional instruction or supports. Maybe their child is at risk of being moved to an alternative placement that the family's not in agreement with. Or subsequently, the family feels that the district is not meeting their child's needs and they would like them to be educated in an alternative placement.
Hmm.
And it really, other times when it's not a crisis, it can be that their child just qualified for services and they want help understanding what all of this means. They just received a 60-page evaluation report with all of the tables and the data, and really just honing in on what does that mean for my child that's at the center of this.
Hmm.
And other times I hear from families that haven't even had their child evaluated yet. Maybe they've expressed concerns and the team has kind of brushed them off, or the team has refused an evaluation. I get that a lot.
Hmm.
So my role is really to help that parent gather the appropriate documentation to prove that an evaluation is warranted, and support them through that process, because there are lots of forms and reports and
Yes.
documents that come along with that.
Yes, and thank you for throwing that third one in. I was going to get that out of you if you didn't say it naturally. Because again, I think there's a bit of an education piece to happen here of parents saying, like, well, we're not at the table. We don't have an IEP. They don't qualify for services. But a lot of what advocacy involves is getting them, like you said, to hear you and to see the fact that some of that is probably appropriate for your child. And, you know, they aren't going to give you anything you don't explicitly ask for.
Absolutely.
Is what I've found. And yet, as a parent, you may not know what to ask for until someone tells you. So I feel like it's this very common catch-22 of, I don't know what I'm asking for, and they're not going to tell me what I should be asking for because it doesn't benefit them. And again, this is my experience. I'm sure there's some very well intentioned school staff out there that may do that. And that's really where I see the benefit to getting an advocate and early on, which we'll get to in a little bit,
For sure.
just to say like, what, this doesn't seem right to me. I don't even know what to do first or next. We're not there yet. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for that.
And to answer your question about when to bring on an advocate, as soon as possible. It's never too early. Again, if your child does not have an IEP and that's something you're thinking about and just want some more information on, that, that's all the reason. And sometimes I work in the background. Sometimes I'm just providing information to families and connecting them with resources and helping them build their team outside of school. Sure. While they kind of let this play out and see how their child responds to interventions in the regular ed classroom. Right. So I would say, it's never too early to bring on an advocate. My favorite families that I get are those early intervention families where I feel like I could get them really set up with a solid educational plan so that they can continue to grow and make adequate progress.
And I assume it's so much easier to step into that scenario than like a crisis scenario where there's a lot of water under the bridge and everyone's at their wit's end. Ideally, we wouldn't wait to get there to reach out. I would also stress, again, in my experience, most advocates, if not all, offer an initial complimentary call, which is the best way to find out, like, is this something that I need? Here are the details of the situation. Here's what's going on. The worst that would happen is someone would say like, oh, maybe you don't, or maybe you're not quite there yet and nothing's lost, but a lot could be gained. At minimum, you'd know that you're doing all you can as a parent. And I think that confidence is really helpful. Okay, so we kind of touched on this, but let you elaborate. What are the benefits of having an advocate, either behind the scenes, like you mentioned, or if you're coming to the table, which is these days, it's generally virtual, not a physical table, but either way, having an advocate on your side of the table?
I think, one of the major benefits of bringing an advocate onto the team is, as I said before, it helps you to be more informed and understand the process and have a plan going into the meeting. A lot of times when I take on a new family, I do my thorough document review, and then we have what I call a planning meeting, and we just discuss their concerns, my impressions based on their child's history, and then we create an action plan. And I follow through after every meeting. This is where we are. These are your concerns that were addressed. Here's what we're going to do next. And really just kind of outlining that plan, because I think what happens is emotions come into play. And there are a lot of times there's a lot of different things going on, and trying to, prioritize and ensure that the concerns are being heard gets very difficult. You're overwhelmed, you're frustrated. And then even just in the meetings, I mean, there's a lot of times there's 5, 6 school professionals sitting at a table, and the parents sometimes by themselves. So just having that extra person there with them, with the emotions piece kind of set aside, and that clear plan that you and your advocate have aligned on, can be very helpful, because I hear a lot that, I work with a lot of families where maybe the mom or the dad's in education, or in the world of pediatric providers, and they know a lot of this, but it's their kid. So it's hard to access that part of their brain when their emotions are taking over. So it can be very helpful just to have a neutral party. Again, advocates have a lot of knowledge about the process, but just having somebody else there with you to make sure that you're being heard.
And that doesn't always have to be an advocate, although that's what I would wish for every family.
Correct.
I would say the meetings move quickly. There are a lot of people talking. There's typically a lot to get through. And you have your own agenda as a parent of things you want to say and make sure get discussed. And it is very difficult to convey everything you want to convey, listen to the responses you're receiving, and record what's happening at the meeting and what they agreed to and what you want to follow up on. So even just logistically, I would say, and I'm sure you would agree, if a parent can just have another person that maybe is less emotionally attached to the situation to handle some of that. They don't have to speak for you, but they could sure take notes or say,
Absolutely.
don't forget, I know you wanted to mention XYZ. They may not be able to tell you, make sure you ask for this, make sure you ask for that. Yeah, I think that's huge, huge benefit. And I can really relate to what you said about the ratio of people. I attended a virtual meeting myself. My partner could not attend. I did not have an advocate at that time. And there were I think seven people on the school side and me by myself. And I'm sure the intention, well, I'm not sure. I would like to be sure that the intention was not to be intimidating. They are required to have certain people present at these
Right.
meetings, but it sure felt like 7-1 and we are stronger than you. And that just sets a tone, I think, from the very beginning of the meeting, at least in my perception, it did. It actually ended up going well, but it's okay.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, as a parent myself, I can see how, intimidating that might
Yes.
be, being kind of on your own
Mm-hmm.
or perceiving
Yes.
that you
And
are.
often, like you mentioned before, you may be the only person, unfortunately, at that meeting who has the full picture of your child and how they're presenting, not just at school, but at home, which was a huge issue for us. No one else was seeing that but me. And the whole history. If there's been like a change in teachers and staff members, and, if this scenario has been going on for a while, are they really filled in on the nitty gritty of the history? So again, just to have an outside person be able to explain that succinctly and, bring that to the table, I think is really helpful.
For sure.
So let's flip it around. Are there any drawbacks to bringing an advocate to a table? I hear a lot of parents say, I know I need one and I want one. I'm so worried it's going to make things contentious.
So let's start with that, because that is a common question in a lot of my consultations towards the end. Do you have any
Yes.
questions for me? Well, how will this go if I bring you to an IEP meeting or if I introduce you to the team? I would say more times than not, 99% of the time, it is not going to create more of a problem. It is only going to help you to be more informed, and that's helpful for the district too, because I feel like a lot of the time when things get very contentious, they're the interests of the parent and the interests of the district are not aligned. So my role is to find out what the parent is looking for, find out what the district is able to offer, and find some sort of, I don't want to say compromise, but solution. Some solution where keeping the child at the center, the child's needs can be met, the parents can feel heard, the district can feel like, they have had a role in making this decision and it's one that they are comfortable and able to provide. So, and I think if it's contentious before I come onto the team, that's that 1%. It's going to be
Fair enough.
contentious for the first meeting. But I think, with my background as a teacher, I understand what it's like to be the teacher. And I like to hope that they are doing their due diligence. They're with your child every day. They're really trying. They're implementing all the strategies. They're collecting the data. They might feel the same way that you do, but somebody's boss's boss is at the table and they may not feel like they can, articulate that. So I don't see, the only drawback I see to bringing an advocate to the table is just the financial burden on the family. And I just wish that there were more resources out there for families to get this information, because I acknowledge the privilege of being able to, afford advocacy services or, an attorney if it ever came to that. And there are, when I started out at the ARC, a lot of families receive their services for free based on their income level. So there are some nonprofits or other companies out there that do support families, but that, it's an investment in your child. And I recognize that. And I'm flexible with families who potentially are not able to financially make it work, how can I support you? How can we make this work? Because I mean, I hear these stories and I just get so invested.
Mm-hmm.
I just,
You're a helper.
I want to, yes, I am a helper. So that's the biggest, I think, drawback is just the financial
Sure.
piece.
Sure. Okay. Thanks for that honest answer. Are there scenarios that are outside of the scope of a non-attorney education advocate that might require an attorney instead?
Sure. So when families start talking about due process,
Mm-hmm.
I like to remind my clients, I am not an attorney. I am familiar with special education laws. I am very familiar with the processes within the district, but I cannot serve as legal counsel. So for mediation, I can attend with the family. If I attend with the family, the district will not bring an attorney. If they bring an attorney to mediation, the district will bring an attorney.
Right.
For due process, the district has the right to bring an attorney. And so I always recommend that I am not with you at due process, that you do have someone that is familiar and can represent you in a legal capacity.
Right. And the goal, I presume, you can correct me, would be that we just don't even get to that point. If we're able
Correct.
to advocate early on, due process would be unnecessary because we find a compromise/solution before that.
Correct. So bringing an advocate on earlier, greatly reduces your chances of needing to go to due process and drag this out because, again, the longer it takes to come to some sort of an agreement, the child is not receiving what they need to be successful.
For sure.
And then
Okay.
I was just going to say another situation where I might recommend an attorney is if I have done my due diligence and, gone through the process and I feel like the team is gridlocked, then it might be time to bring in an attorney.
For sure. And just on a personal note, I can say there are attorneys that work on a contingency. So again, if we're sounding privileged and you don't have that within your means, everyone has their own setup, and some will get their fees reimbursed through whatever compromise or solution is agreed upon. So let's do a little exercise. Let me tell you a little bit about the very early stage when my gut first started telling me that something was up with my son with respect to school and how I handled it. Of course, I knew nothing then that I know now. And you tell me how you would rewrite it. So I'm tempted to say, tell me what I did wrong, but of course I don't want to label it that way. You can only do what know better, do better.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll tell me if I could go back in time, what would you have me do differently and why?
Sure.
So for anyone who doesn't know my story, I'll just recap very quickly. My son is 13 and a half years old as I record this, but beginning in preschool, we had some concerns. Separation was very difficult. He was very overwhelmed sensory wise in the classroom setting. It was not getting easier from day to day, week to week, not even year to year. And then kindergarten felt like a little bit of a respite. We were like, okay, maybe he just took a long time to warm up. But first grade, his teacher was not as warm and fuzzy. Everything went back to before. Of course, I was the one seeing the morning dread and build up and the after school restraint collapse. Now I know there's a word for that. And so I brought my concerns about his mood and behavior, but also as he got older, my concerns about his performance not matching his potential. He's average to above average intelligence. He tries really hard. I expressed those concerns verbally to his teachers, let's say at conferences, on multiple occasions. They would, of course, give me a sweet response like, well, here's what I can do. We'll modify something, between ourselves, or, oh, he's just very young. Like it's too early to really know anything. Or, oh, but he's so good in class. He's so
Such
sweet.
a
He's
good
kind.
kid.
He's so
Yeah.
good. He's kind. He's helpful. He's quiet. He doesn't cause any problems. He's respectful. And I was like, yeah, yes, thank you. I know. It's great. Great to hear. And I have these other concerns. And nothing really, I did that in first, I did that in second, I did it in third. And at the end of third, finally, his teacher agreed. Oh, well, now he is starting to, whatever, talk too much during class and become a behavior issue. So something should be done. But it's summer, so wait till next year. And of course, we went and got him privately tested over the summer because I didn't want to lose more time. But all along, I was trusting that if there was something that could be done or more that could be done besides just me and the teacher coming up with a strategy, or something else I should be doing or asking for, I thought that they would tell me. That was why I was going to them. That didn't happen. So hearing that, if a parent were to be in that position and their gut is pinging that something is up, how would you rewrite that?
I would say first, trust your gut. Trust your gut. You know your child best. You've known them the longest. You see all areas of their life, as you said earlier, and then you've been along on this journey with them where every year they're getting a new teacher. They have the same parents. The parents are seeing from year to year, this is continuing. This is not something that, he's too young, he's going to grow out of. This is a consistent concern. And I would say, absolutely put those concerns into writing.
That's what I was waiting for.
Yes, put them in writing. And also to have that continuity, I would say, yes, send it to the classroom teacher, discuss it with them, but also include the guidance counselor, include the principal, include if there's a support team at the school, a reading specialist if you have concerns about reading, a math specialist, social worker, depending on what your child's needs or your concerns are. Include all of the people. Don't feel like you are being a burden by including all of the people. You're just getting more eyes on the situation, and to have that continuity from year to year, because every year teacher gets a new set of kids. They don't know what happened last year. Sometimes they do. But you have been living it with your child, so just don't feel intimidated to make your voice heard.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree to all of that. Now that I know more, I love the phrase. It's become one of my mantras. If it isn't in writing, it never happened. Because from a legal point of view, which we are now currently pursuing, I have no proof that I expressed all those concerns that early on, which is really unfortunate. Of course, I'm kicking myself, and it's part of why I'm on this mission to get this information to families much earlier in their journey, ideally before they even need it. Because I wish that someone had done that for me. And then I feel like my other thing was I did not know there was a chain of command I could progress through. If I wasn't getting anything from the teacher, I could put it in writing. And by writing, also, we mean email's sufficient at this stage. It's not like you have to do a snail mail thing.
Carrier pigeon.
Yes. And you can just, keep going. So that was the main thing I wanted to get across today. And of course, you are the expert, on your child. Trust your gut, which actually brings me to my next question. I think we already answered it, but let's see if there's anything else you want to add to it. If a parent's gut, particularly mom, but all parents, caregivers, is telling them something isn't right about their child's development, their child's learning, but others don't see the issue, don't agree, what would you say to them that maybe you haven't said, or what do you want to stress?
I think documentation is huge. Put everything in writing. Make sure you have that paper trail. And then in addition to the school-based team, there is a plethora of providers and resources within the community. And I would just recommend that you start to build your outside team, because if it comes to the point where they are in need of services in school, you have this team outside of school where you're no longer alone. You're not the only
Mm-hmm.
person coming to the meeting saying, this is what I'm seeing. Now you have an outside PT, OT, speech working with your child, and they're seeing it too. So really just having that strength in your outside team. And of course, as the parent, it just helps you feel so much less alone on this journey.
Yes, absolutely. And then again, on a personal note, I was a different person back then. I'm on my own therapy journey, and I'm learning to use my voice and not feel like a burden and be the squeaky wheel, and, advocate for your kiddo when they can't do it for themselves. But that took a lot of time and a lot of hard work. And so my point being, I let others make me doubt myself about what I was seeing and what I was feeling, and not just in the educational sense, but my son was ill many times as a toddler. The first time he ever got sick, I was trying to be real chill about it. And I was like, I'm not going to rush him to the doctor. He's fine. I know I'm a first time mom, but I have tons of experience with kids, and I'm not going to be like that crazy mom, right? By the time I took him in, the doctor looked at me and was like, don't you see his chest like caving in when he breathes? And I'm not laughing because it was funny. I'm laughing at myself. And I was like, well, no, no one ever taught me to look at his chest.
Right.
And he had pneumonia, bronchitis, croup, and an ear infection all at once or something. And they immediately put him on, the breathing thing and the inhalers and all that stuff. That was a lesson for me. You can underreact in addition to overreacting. But the reason I mention it is that started a pattern for him of every little cold he got would turn into a full blown respiratory emergency.
Wow.
And I kept saying to his pediatrician, like she said, oh, there could be underlying asthma. But again, I got but he's too young for us to know that or investigate that. And then she'd say, if it happens again, I'll send you to a specialist. And then it would happen again. And she would go, no, not yet, not yet. So I ended up like backdooring it. I called and got a different doctor who I knew was
I have done the same
in charge that day and was much more laid back. And I said, hey, she said the next time this happened, we'd get referred to a specialist. Can you do that? And he did. And the first thing they said was, why didn't you come sooner? He has asthma, and we could have had him on a daily protocol long ago that would have helped you avoid all of this. And that was really my first experience of do not trust someone's answer just because they are seemingly the expert on something. That doesn't make them an expert on everything. And you really don't be worried about looking like a fool or whatever you're thinking. Like the worst that happens is that you're wrong. And then education wise, just to bring it back to our topic today, when I think of all of those teachers and providers that said, he's fine, he's young, he's good. Even my own partner at the time, he's giving us a hard time. And I would say, no, I think he's having a hard time. I really felt like an island, like I was the only one. I was like a crazy helicopter mom that was just over, thinking everything. And I just want parents to hear that after all of that, last year, he finally got his slew of diagnoses. Thank you. Applause. And they are many. He has autism. He has ADHD. He has anxiety. He has a math-specific learning disability. He has OCD. He has dysgraphia, which is a coordination disorder that has been impacting his handwriting from day one. It's hardly legible after tons of support for handwriting. And it's just incredible to me that I could doubt, it's just such a journey from like doubting and everyone poo-pooing it to like, oh, it's even more than what you thought. And here was this poor kid existing with this neurodivergent brain in a neurotypical world and school setting, and no one even knew it. So just, to really emphasize trust your gut and be the squeaky wheel. I live with those things every day.
And just because someone is an expert, like the example that you gave of the doctor, I'm assuming maybe was a pediatrician, and they are not an expert on all areas.
Yes.
Going to a specialist, right? Similar to on the school team where maybe the principal serving as the LEA, the local education association,
we'll go with that.
They're representing the school district and speaking to the resources that can be provided. maybe they're not an expert because they don't have a degree in special education or they don't
Mm-hmm.
have as much background knowledge. But I bet you the supervisor of special education or the director of special education people services would be, in this case, the specialist that you would want to bring onto the team if you were
Right.
talking
Yeah.
about.
Exactly. Exactly. Excellent. All right. Anything else that you would want parents or caregivers to know about considering advocacy or seeking out an advocate that we did not touch on so far?
I think you briefly mentioned this, but most of us offer the free consultation. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, reach out, look, see who is available in your area, schedule a few consultations, learn about that advocate's background, their experience, and most importantly, their approach, and see
Mm-hmm.
if that aligns with, your hopes and wishes and the way that you would like to approach this situation to support your child.
That's an excellent point, because I can also say that I've worked with several people along this journey. I sort of landed on the only one I knew of at first. And something about the way we did not fit together. Lovely person,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely knew what she was doing. I called her a bulldog. Um, I felt more stressed after
Mm-hmm.
each conversation with her. And one day I said, "What? Wait, this is the whole reason I'm seeking somebody, is to like take a little bit off my plate. So I feel
Yeah.
like I don't have to keep researching, and, I want to feel less stressed." And, maybe it was about me. Like I said, I'm on my own journey of improving myself. So maybe it was just not a right fit in that regard. And then I spoke to somebody else, and it was just a completely different. I was like, oh, I could hear the just singing. So definitely talk to more than one person. There's no one person that's going to fit every situation, every style, personality style. You will get a vibe, just like when you try on your first wedding dress or walk
Mm-hmm.
in the house that you're going to buy. Like, you will just know if that person has the vibe that will be
Mm-hmm.
helpful to work with. Um, and another thing I wasn't planning to mention, but there is no, from what I have seen, uniformity in terms of what the advocate will and won't do for you
Correct.
for what you're paying for. And that's really important for some families. If you are
Mm-hmm.
like, I want to hand this over and do nothing, you have to make sure you're finding someone that includes a lot in their services. If you're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I want to keep it as minimal as possible, I just want you to look over the documents, maybe the person you're talking to does so much more than that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
definitely compare what they offer and do with what you need, and make sure it's a fit in that regard as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. I have one more question for you, Melissa.
Okay.
I want you to take off your advocacy hat. You can. I know they're very
Taking it off.
intertwined.
Taking it off.
Now we are just parents. We're just moms. If you're wearing your mom hat, before we sign off, what is one thing about parenting that you wish you knew sooner and you want our listeners to know now?
I'm so glad you sent me this question in advance because it it required so much reflection. It's a
I'm
lot of
glad I could
pressure.
provide you with that exercise. I have a whole list in my head, but not everyone has that yet.
I think what stood out most to me as I reflected, so my oldest is 4, so the
Mhm.
past 4 years. Something that I did not know going into this, and again, I felt confident. I was an elementary school teacher. I
Mm.
am a figure skating coach. I work with kids. I've babysat, I've nannied. I'm prepared to be a mom. And then you have a baby.
Ha ha ha.
And totally unprepared in some ways. But so, as I mentioned, I have a 2 and a 4-year-old. So I have 2 toddlers in my house. And what I have found is it requires so much emotional regulation
Mm.
to show up every day for my kids, right?
Yeah.
They're these little people and they have so many feelings right now. And just for me to be able to hold space for those feelings and help them appropriately process them, it has to start with myself and making sure that I'm regulated.
Mm.
And it can be exhausting. And it's just something that I didn't expect. As a teacher, I always felt like I was very patient with my students. I think it's just different when it's your kid.
Absolutely.
And And so, I mean, it's not really a tip or anything. It's just something.
I think there's a lot of value in just keeping it real and being honest about the things you didn't expect, anticipate, weren't prepared for. If we could be more real about how day-to-day parenting actually feels and looks,
Hmm.
I think it wouldn't be such a shock
Yeah,
when parents get there, and there wouldn't be such a stigma around like, yeah, I don't, what, I'm supposed to love every minute of this? How is that possible? There's a lot
right.
of moments that I do not care for. I would not
Yeah.
like to repeat.
So
Um,
I guess my tip is give yourself grace.
yeah,
Parenting is it's the hardest job and the most
yes,
rewarding and everything in between. So give yourself grace.
absolutely.
Nobody is perfect.
I love that. That is wonderful. Melissa, thank you so much for joining me and sharing
Thank
your
you.
time and your expertise. Parents, I'll be back soon with more stuff I wish I knew sooner. In the meantime, I will leave you with my list of stuff I've learned the hardest way, some of which we actually touched on today. Number 1, accept help when it is offered. 2, ask for it when it isn't. 3, you are the expert on your child. Trust your gut. And 4, be the squeaky wheel. Bye bye.